Hello, hello, and welcome to the Sober Bartender podcast, the show where we recover from life. I'm your host, Brandy Kelly, and today I have a guest for you. We've got Sarah Moore here. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
So, Sarah is a leadership coach, a facilitator, and a writer. She wrote a book called Full of Herself that I'm excited to hear about. But, Sarah, I'm glad you're here. We started talking just before I hit record, and we're off and running. So I'm excited to just jump right back into having this awesome conversation.
Yeah, me too. That's what we're here to do, to record it.
Yeah, so that we
it.
can share it. That was actually what inspired the podcast. Is I have these amazing friends and we would have these just mind-blowing, like unpacking, life-changing, healing conversations. And I was like, I wish we could clue people in on these so that people could share in these aha moments and maybe save themselves some of the trouble of learning things the hard way like we have.
Okay, you're inspiring me. Let me tell you why. So I've had this coaching business, right? I'm a life coach. That's what I'm doing day in, day out for over a decade. And in my brain, I keep thinking, if I could just capture the things I say throughout my day, whether that's a conversation with a friend, in the moment with a client, riffing with my husband, like whatever that is, because there is so much gold that not just comes out of my mouth, but really all of our mouths when we're living our lives. And if I could somehow magically capture that and that be the content for our social, I mean, all day long, right? I mean, I've dreamed about being filmed, right? Like putting cameras in our house and then literally just paying someone to strip out bits that we think are awesome. And then secondly, I've been thinking about wanting to do a podcast for a while now. You know, I used to be someone who would, the moment I had an idea, I wanted to run, do it. Like if I've had the idea, it means I need to go right now, i.e., forcing everything to death. And I've learned so much in the last few years about sitting back and letting an idea marinate. And if it still feels good after a little while, maybe then I can take the next step around it. And so this podcast has been marinating. And the way that you just described having these really cool conversations, I don't know that I'd quite put it the way you described it. And so it just gave me another little nod of, okay, that idea still makes sense to me. I wonder if I'm getting closer to taking action on it. So there you go. Thanks.
Well, that is really neat. For me, I knew in conjunction with these conversations, I knew that I was being called for more. Like I knew I wanted to be a coach, I wanted to be a speaker, I wanted to be an author, and I didn't know how that was going to manifest. And I moved from Seattle down to Corpus and had like no friends and no connections and, was a newlywed. And I was like, came across an ad for a podcast and I was like, okay, this is it. And my husband kind of helped encourage me to where I was like, I didn't know what the thing was, but I knew I was open and I was ready and I was putting that out there. Like I'm ready and I'll know it when I see it. And then I came across a course and it wasn't just a course on how to, the technical parts, but it was also like the mental and emotional and the imposter syndrome. And, I have it was over a year ago and I still meet with a group from that course to where we, support and encourage each other every other week. So if you're thinking about it and it is still something, I totally agree. This is not an impulsive kind of thing because it requires attention, it requires energy, and it shows when you just throw it together as opposed to when you're, taking care of, like you put care into like, what content you're bringing to your listeners. And it feels
Yeah.
very fulfilling.
Oh my gosh, that's so great to hear. Yeah, I feel, especially having written this book and sharing it, it's created this whole new avenue in
Mhm.
my business. What I didn't anticipate was that in writing the book, which I wrote simply because I wanted to write it, right? I wasn't trying to come up with a great business strategy or create a new platform for my speaking. It was just, I like to write. I've written a blog for a long time. I was an editor for a small newspaper back in my 20s. I had a couple little travel articles published. I thought I wanted to be a travel writer. That's a whole different story. And thankfully, God got me on that one because it was not the journey I was supposed to be walking. And so writing has been in my experience, in my DNA. And I finally felt at a place that, gosh, I think I have something to say and I'm ready to write. And actually, cute little story there. You mentioned imposter syndrome. A friend and strategist that I hired for my business was talking to me about writing the book. And I thought, well, I better start taking some courses about how to write a book, or I need to invest in that in some way so that I can become ready. And she said, very simply, or you could just start writing. And I was so glad. I mean, it was such a simple message, and I was so glad I was open to hearing it. So I did. I just started writing. And so I didn't anticipate that in writing this book, I would start to almost craft my own understanding of my work, land on this title that was gifted to me by somebody I happened to be talking to when I was sharing. I think the book could be this. I think it's headed in this direction. And she said, call it Full of Herself. And I think there's a brand that we can build around that, right? So it's opened up all of these new lanes of possibility. And we had a book launch party and we had a pre-launch, and we reached out to stores to see if they could carry it, and we did media releases. And this is on top of typical events that I already lead, my one-on-one coaching, which is really the bread and butter of my week. And so just this week, I've realized I have all of these compartments open in my head because of all of these things that we're doing, and I can't possibly keep them all open. It's just way too much. So as you would, and I wouldn't change a thing because it's been a beautiful season where I think we've tried a lot, we've been open, we've gone for it and not been shy about sharing the book, which I think is all part of the Full of Herself message. And when I hear you talk about, starting a podcast isn't for the faint of heart, it's not something to take lightly, and it shows when you do. It's reminding me that come the new year, as a business especially, I want to be really strategic about how we're building this business. And that's got to be one or two strategies top, right? It almost feels like for a decade, I've sort of been trying a bit of this, trying a bit of that, what will stick? Because I've been finding my voice, I've been finding my own comfort level as a business owner. And now it's time to really say, we're going to go down this road and we're going to go deep and we're not going to go as wide. And I'm really craving that. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I just appreciate like these little pieces you're flinging my way because I feel like I'm picking them up.
That's awesome. Yes. And I totally identify with what you said because I will try or I will start several different things because my goal is to ultimately be a coach. Like I coach people, but it's a whole different conversation that we will not have here. But I've absolutely coached people, I've sponsored people, but I have not been able to bring myself to charge anyone. I've never given anyone an opportunity to give me money for my offerings. Anyway, I know that's a whole loaded thing, but yeah, so with that in mind, like I do try to do all of these things. And like once again, I have this wonderful husband that just goes, why don't we focus on one thing all the way? Because I'm like, no, because I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this. And then I'm like, why am I so scatterbrained? And I just feel exhausted and pulled in every different direction. Because yeah, focus, intention.
Why Why do you think you do that, Brandy? Why do you say, yeah, let's do this, let's
So part
go?
of it is I'm very impulsive, but
Mm,
also part of it is I procrastinate. Like I procrastinate. Like if I have to take in more information, then it gives me a reason to why I'm not there yet, why I'm not showing up yet, I'm not doing the thing yet, because oh, I need this other course, or I need that, and it's justified because it is something good to be taking in, but it's also not getting me to where I have the things. I have enough. I am enough. It's just, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's imposter syndrome, really, isn't it? We don't feel like we're ready or enough, or it's safe here and that's more uncertain. I
Mhm.
mean, heck, that's why we drink in the first place,
Yeah.
right? It's to kind of numb some of that unworthiness. And
Yeah.
now
Oh, I
we're,
mean, yeah, yeah. Like I don't identify with my drinking self, but also unbecoming all of the things that I was in the majority of my life, in 37 years of my 30, I don't know. But yes, unworthiness was one of the main fears that I uncovered in doing the 12 steps.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God bless the 12 steps.
Mhm.
How did we get so lucky as to have the 12 steps in
Yeah.
our lives? God,
So
it's
I don't
crazy.
actually even I don't go to 12-step recovery anymore. I'm actually in recovery dharma now. But I still value and live the steps on a daily basis. And now I also am pursuing the Eightfold Path, which it's not an either or. I believe it's an and also.
Mm. What's the Eightfold Path?
So that's just the basic Buddhist principles, like wise understanding, wise action, wise livelihood. Um, so it's a neat concept to apply to recovery, because
Mm.
we do all of these things based on reacting to these impulses, and um it's kind of, there was a lot of fear and shame that I uncovered in the 12 steps, whereas in this I'm learning now to apply loving kindness to that, like instead of just giving the things over to God and then recognizing that they're still there, I'm going, okay, well that's there, and also I'm gonna take some time to love that part of myself.
Yeah, almost like, okay, I know it's there, but sort of what can I not replace, but how can I put something in there that can grow and become something more meaningful? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that. Yeah. That's awesome.
it's
Yeah,
interesting, but
I've
I agree. I love the 12 steps. They absolutely saved my life, changed my life, revolutionized how I show up in the world.
and what made you decide to step away from them and walk a different path?
That's a really good question. It was actually, I love that you're asking the questions. I'm sorry. Um see, you're a natural at this, just so you know. Um I was in a really structured lineage. So really like 3 points of contact a day for life, one day at a time. But, just in the morning, it's, you wake up, you meditate, you journal, and you send that to your sponsor. And she does the same. You do the same, you send that to your sponsees, they do the same. And that's your 11th step. And then there's a phone call every single day, a check in call. And then every single night, there's your inventory off of my spiritual toolkit. And it saved my life in the beginning. And it was everything I needed, just the overkill and not trusting myself and building that conscious contact with my higher power. And also having this woman that I could rely on for when, I just was on shaky ground, or just, was having a hard time lifing. And it was everything I needed. But then as my recovery progressed and things started to change, it started to feel very codependent. And I felt like the steps did their job. And I know we're not supposed to say those things. We're not supposed to say I'm recovered, or I'm, like I don't have any desire to drink or drug. That's not in my realm of consciousness when stuff comes up. That's not an option. And so in kind of just having like these different, I just started feeling like it was time for something else. Like what I was doing wasn't what I needed anymore. And that was a really hard, I mean, it was hard. I had sponsees. I had this woman that I've talked to 3 times a day, every day for, it was like just over 2 years. And so
Mm.
it's been almost a year since I stepped away, and it was really, really hard. But there was a lot of shame that was involved in my recovery. Like there was just a lot, there I did learn boundaries, but I also learned, I guess, yeah, just a lot of the codependency, and I relied heavily on these things, as opposed to, the steps taught me to rely on God, and just, that I don't necessarily need all of these things. I don't find myself ever saying, man, I need a meeting, or I can't trust my thinking, or, I've got an alcoholic mind. I don't like calling myself an alcoholic every day for the rest of my life. I don't like keeping that active in my consciousness, because I don't
Mm.
believe that I will forget and turn back.
Mm. Oof.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me as I listen to your story that recovery, growth, change, it can look so many different ways.
Hmm.
There isn't one right way. Part of the way that alcoholism and addiction affects me is that I think I'm right. I know best, right? And so I'm a massive advocate for 12-step recovery, for support groups, which are free,
Yeah.
so underutilized and free. And I just love your story because you found your way. You found your way, a way that makes sense to you, and you're at peace with that. And just a good reminder that, it's each of our journeys to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you said that, though, because I absolutely identify with that. I just felt like I knew the way, and I had the answer for the rest of my life, because it just works. But then realizing that that doesn't work for everyone, it was humbling and interesting. And like I said, terrifying, because then
Yeah.
I went from felt like I knew everything. Not everything, but I knew I had the answer, to feeling like maybe I didn't. Um, so I'm so sorry for what my brain just did. So you have experience with the 12 steps, and then I believe with Al-Anon as well.
Yeah, that's my lane of recovery is Al-Anon. So I'm not the addict. I'm the family member who's been affected. So yeah, I've been in Al-Anon family groups for I think it's about 14 or 15 years at this point. I would say worked a decent program the majority of that time. I went because I met my husband. I was in my early 20s. I'm from England. He was a redneck from Texas. I always joke that he was everything I wasn't looking for, and yet God God knew exactly what to put in my path. And the day that we met, he told me that he didn't drink and he went to meetings, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What? Like you don't drink at all?" Like I love to drink. I grew up in a family that loved to drink.
Yeah.
I thought people were in England we say like sad, meaning dorky who didn't drink. I'm like, how on earth do you have fun if you don't do that? And I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that he and I wouldn't be able to celebrate like with a bottle of wine or a bottle of champagne on a special occasion or whatever that is. And so anyway, we started dating, and slowly I started learning about the disease of addiction. I didn't know it existed. I'd never heard those words uttered before. And the more I learn, the more I realize, I think I may have grown up in an alcoholic home. And so those kind of seeds started to get planted. And then what became very clear very quickly, which I've subsequently learned about the disease of addiction, is it affects everybody in the family. Like it's not just the drinker, it's not just the person using. And so I was pretty crazy in our relationship. I would start a fight, and then just as the fight was wrapping up, or he was saying the thing I wanted him to say, then it suddenly wasn't enough. And so I'd restart the fight. I mean, I was just living in my own version of insanity. I didn't know at the time that I was placing all of my happiness in his hands. I didn't know that I could control my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. I thought that that was something that lived outside of me, depending on what was happening. And I also didn't know that I was deeply sensitive, and that could be a lovely thing, and I could learn to harness it. I just felt raw and exposed and took so many things personally. And so what was interesting was that I felt really quite confident and ballsy on the outside, and I lived into that, right? I was part of a family that grew up traveling the world. I rode horses and competed, and I did quite well at a local level. I played the piano, and I was pretty good at that. Like I was always looking to look good and sound good. And as a family, because there was this alcoholic dynamic that I didn't know about, that's what was being taught. That's what was being shown, because we were also trying to hide the chaos that was happening on the inside. And so finally, after about 2 years together, he's my husband now. He said to me, babe, and he'd been sober 4 or 5 years at that point and was working a good program. So he was only 21 when he got sober. So, he'd done a lot spiritually, and he had a great support group of men around him, and he knew how to be vulnerable with them. These were all of the things he learned from the fellowship. And I was really more like a lone duck, and I'd lived in a bunch of different countries, and I'd moved to America at 22, and I had $100 in my back pocket, and I kind of made my way. So I sort of identified with being confident and ballsy, but really on the inside, I was just broken, scared, insecure as all get out. But I didn't know that. So there was this massive disconnect. So finally, one day he says, you could really do with some kind of help. He's like, I don't know what it is, whether it's al-anon, therapy, which really wasn't a big thing in England. It's very much an American thing to do therapy. And I didn't necessarily have a judgment against it. It was just like, oh, that's new. I don't know anyone who's gone to therapy. But he's like, but something, like you got to do something. So we ended up in couples counseling, which was just a humbling experience, because I didn't know. It was the very beginning of me learning how to look at my own stuff. And I didn't like that. And I wanted Preston to be wrong. I wanted him to take more responsibility than he was taking. It was hard. And then very quickly thereafter, I somehow decided to go to my first al-anon meeting. It was in Houston, Texas. And the only reason I went was to please Preston, my husband. I wanted to look good. I wanted the pat on the back after I went, when I came home, that, oh, look at me go. I didn't go for me, which nobody in al-anon goes to, or should I say very few people go for themselves. We go to learn how to get the alcoholic sober. And in this case, it was some issues I had with my dad that I really wanted to resolve. And Brandy, I'll just tell you, there's a lady in my home group, and the phrase she uses is, I stumbled and I stayed. And that's what happened to me. I've no idea why I went back, except there was something in that room that seemed good. It seemed like something I might want, even though it was scary as heck. And so I just kept going there. And I was talk about a nerve end, just scared, terrified to even when we go around the room and say my name, terrified. My heart would race. I would go bright red. And then what's interesting is after I started going to Al-Anon, I discovered coaching. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing I've always wanted to do. I didn't know it existed. And because I remember when I was about 14 saying I'd love to get paid to have intimate conversations. This was like at a school, like, what are you going to be when you're grown up night? But I knew it wasn't counseling. I knew it wasn't psychology. I knew it wasn't teaching, but I didn't know the alternative. And so that was an interesting thing to then combine coaching and Al-Anon. At some points, I didn't know where coaching began and Al-Anon ended. And I think I'm at peace with that now. I'm clear mostly around my Al-Anon boundaries and what that program is. And I'm clear about my coaching work. And the beautiful thing is that I'm a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
So one is never going to be off the table no matter where I am. Sure, I know I need to know how to lean into one more than the other depending on the room. But now it's just this beautiful combination. And, like anything, that's just time and experience and getting comfortable with myself. And also in those early days in Al-Anon, you know what? That would be a lie. Not just those early days, even until recently, a preoccupation with sounding good, looking good. Like I'm really in my Al-Anon program. Like I know the books and the literature, all that kind of stuff that I'm just still learning to let go of at 40. It'll be lifelong, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. And I love that because I always say everyone, hopefully not everyone has to be plagued by alcoholism, and whether it's, within themselves or a loved one, but everyone could stand to benefit from the things that we get out of the 12 steps. Like being able to look at yourself, unpack every single thing and examine it and then, give it up and, I mean, everything about it, I feel like everyone could benefit. So just to hear that intertwine those things makes all the sense to me because that's
it's a beautiful gift. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Do I want alcoholism in my life? No, of course not. But boy, can I use the pain of that for something really good that shapes me into someone I really like today. You bet. And that's a gift because most people don't get that gift. Most people are just in it, struggling, don't know that there's a way out. And especially those family members, because that's my experience. They're just so busy waiting for the alcoholic or the addict in the room to get clean. And this, the best way we can change somebody else is to change ourselves. So it's just a gift to get to change and grow and have some tools, whatever they may be, right, that make sense to us and that make us better and give us a sense of peace when we can grasp onto it. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And so you discovered that you wanted to be a coach by going to Al-Anon.
I think that opened the door for me because I was already doing work on myself. So when I trained to be a coach, I thought, great, I'm going to train to be a coach. What I didn't anticipate and was a great surprise was that I would have to use all of those tools and techniques on myself. That I would be studying these principles and concepts and looking at them through my own lens, my own life. And so it ended up being this year of really intense transformation that, again, was just the beginning, because now looking back, I know that there were so many more layers underneath that. And so I believe that Al-Anon opened the door for it, even though the seed had been planted in me, who knows when, maybe from when I was born, that this kind of work was where I wanted to be. And I just happened to read an article about a life coach, right? I don't think anything just happens. I don't believe in coincidences. I was right on time. God was right on time with placing that in my path. And I was in a space, again, thanks to Al-Anon, that I was able to see it and grasp it and knew it was something that I needed to take a look at. And then sure enough, at some point became a path that I was willing to walk down.
I love that. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I don't think anything comes, I don't think my sponsor used to always say, is it odd or is it God? And I'm like, yeah, like there's just
Yeah.
there's not anything that just accidentally pops up. It's just a matter of being present enough to know, like, am I here for this, or am I going to hope it comes by again?
Is it odd or is it God? I feel like I've heard that before, and that's a good one. It's not one I use. I'll start using it.
I still use
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not odd, right? It's always God.
Like, of course that happened. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you know that you have God working in your life and working for your highest good, like the odds are not stacked against you. And yeah, you stop living in like that victim mentality. Like that was something that it was really big and I didn't know that I lived in that victim space. Like you were saying, like before you went to the couples therapy to where, you wanted your husband to take accountability. And, we're always projecting all of these things onto the other person. And do you agree? Like it's such a gift being able to say, wait, I'm choosing this, I'm doing this. And that means that I can do something different.
Yes. It depends on the day or the moment. When I'm spiritually fit and grounded,
Yeah.
oh boy, is that a gift. When I am spiritually off the beam, because I haven't done the things I need to do to take care of my spirit, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
I just want it to be your fault, So I I think what's different today though is even when I wish it could be different, and of course a part of me still wants that to be true, I also know it begins with me. Right? I know the duality there. I know that truly the gift is that really thank God that isn't the case, because there's nothing I can do about that. But I can deal with what's here. Not always easy at all. I mean, it's just the work of a lifetime to get recentered, refocused, take responsibility. And you're right. It really is the ultimate gift.
Yeah. I just think I still am in a spot where I'm just glad I get to do it. Like I will be I'm just, they say restless, irritable, and discontented. I just will feel like everything is wrong. And then I'm like, well, have I drank water? Have I meditated? Have I prayed? Have I,
Yeah.
have I done the things that connect me and ground me and get me on the beam and fit. And it's like, well, no, it probably has been about a week. And I feel it because I feel like everybody's mad at me and I feel like everything is wrong and everything is bugging me. But I have a solution to those things. So
Yeah. Yeah, there was a earlier this year, I felt like I was really fighting with and feeling like a victim to the idea that every single day I got to do something to take care of my spiritual condition. God, are you kidding me?
it's not fair.
No, it's not that. All the things that I do, I meditate, I journal, I move my body, I eat well, like I do all of these things, God. Like every single day, I got to keep doing them. Are you kidding? Why can't I just have a day off? I mean, and of course I can.
Mm-hmm.
but this sort of like wrestling with wanting things to be different. I mean, that's it right there. That's everything that gets me into trouble. I'm just trying to in Al-Anon, we talk about the 4 M's: managing, manipulation, martyrdom, and mothering.
Mm.
Ugh. right? When I'm doing any one of those four things or all four things at the same time, I've totally forgotten where I was going with that.
We were
Yes,
just basically talking
just
about acceptance and wanting things to be different.
exactly. Like God, can this just be different? No. Right back to step one, I'm powerless. As you say, accepting what is.
Mm-hmm.
Man, though, I can just get off on a tangent with wanting something to be different. Just
Yeah.
so I can feel differently. It's crazy.
And that's
Crazy.
so you're totally allowed to feel differently once you let yourself, because we always want the outside to change. And what we get in doing this work is we recognize that once we change the insides, everything on the outside looks different.
That's right. Isn't that funny? Like nothing can change. Nothing can change on the outside. But I can go to a meeting. I can have any number of things. I can go out for a walk. I can journal for 10 minutes. I can call my sponsor. I can have a great session with a client and really feel like they were helped. I was helped.
Mm.
I maybe tried on a new tool, or there was just something in there that God wanted me to hear as I was saying it. And it could be anything. I could play with my dog. And I can suddenly see something different that I didn't see before. But nothing changed out here.
Mm-hmm.
That still blows my mind because it's not the way. I don't know if it's I was wired or just because of the circumstances growing up. I don't really know, and I don't know that it matters, but just not my natural tendency to see things that way. But it truly is just a beautiful miracle. Yeah.
That is wonderful. I think it's so neat, like your description of your background, and then you meet this man that's already sober.
Oh, Branny, can we talk about that?
Yes.
I say this all of the time. The miracle of me falling in love with an alcoholic addict who was already in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't believe in God. I didn't want anything to do with God before I came to Al-Anon. I would proudly say that religion, I know 12 step isn't a religious program, it's a spiritual one. And I would say, oh, religion is a crutch for the weak. And I would boastfully announce that. I mean, God's hands was all over that for me,
Mm-hmm.
that he was already sober.
Yeah.
The miracle.
I love it. I can
Yeah.
picture it. 21, I don't know, but that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that for
He
you.
was
And you're
young.
just looking at him thinking that he's screwed up, and he's like, hey,
Ah,
hey,
ah, ah.
doing
Oh
all
my
the
gosh,
work,
exactly
and you're
it.
just like,
Yeah. 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 And he thought, I was a normie. He's like, oh, I found someone who's normal. And then come to realize, no, just no, the
yeah.
the apple didn't drop far from the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that too, in so many ways we're so opposite. Preston grew up in a small town and pretty conservative, and I grew up traveling the world, and he went to just the local school and I went to a private school, and he got in a lot of trouble and I rode horses. Like it's down. He's got a Texas accent. I've got an English accent. Like it just seems so different. But what's under the surface is so, so similar. Struggling with self-worth, it's just self-worth, just struggling with self-worth, and thankfully having shared values around wanting to grow and change. I know that Preston and I feel the most connected, the most intimate when we talk about change in ourselves, when we talk about how we approached a conversation differently, and maybe we miss the mark, and then because we've done the work or we're doing the work, we have the tools to go back and make it right. Like it's something that we really come together over. So yeah, what a journey.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I met my husband when I was sober. We had so much that you just said, like, I moved here and there and everywhere, and he grew up in the same town. His parents are still married. He, played baseball, and I dated a Hell's Angel for 11 years, and I traveled the world on the back of a motorcycle, and like totally these opposites, but we were able to come together because I was sober, because of the work and the steps. Like, that's how I was able to see, like you said, everything under the surface is the same. And I think that's the case with a lot of us. And I think that our block with a lot, I think our block with a lot of people is feeling like we're so different, or we don't understand, and we don't realize that underneath we're pretty much all the same.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah. There's a story in Full of Herself. Well, actually, it's probably a theme in many stories, my book, about always wanting to be different, right? So the story that came to mind is when I was 16, I went on this high school expedition to Costa Rica, and only a few of us were chosen in the school to go, and we spent 5 weeks there and blah blah. And when I came back, I felt that people wouldn't really understand what we'd been through. And there's truth to that. They wouldn't, because there are some things you can't put into words. You can't describe what it's like to be in a space experiencing a certain thing that's so different from, where you live or grow up. And but what I ended up writing, which took me by surprise, and I knew it was true the moment I wrote it, was I didn't want them to understand, because I wanted to feel different. I wanted to feel superior to them because I'd had this special experience.
Yeah.
And that's an easy place for me to go, which is, again, self-worth related. I want to feel above you or feel like a piece of shit and be below you, right?
Uh-huh.
And you're right, like we're just these humans having experiences that can be wildly different, and below them we have these base needs that we want to be met, which is to feel safe, to feel loved. Part of feeling loved is to feel seen and heard and connected. We want to feel like we're doing something meaningful with our lives. We all derive meaning so differently. I can't think what else, but I think that just being a people among people is the work for me.
Yes.
I don't need to sound flashy. I don't need to make it sound better than it is. Heck, I was just writing about this morning. I'm doing a fourth step, so taking a fearless and moral inventory. I'm in the fifth step process of it, which is sharing it with somebody else in the program. For me, that's my sponsor. And I'm doing some work around some people in my life where I'm realizing that I've told a bigger, grander story of some things that happened just because I want to be impressive. And I'm literally writing this morning, I can just accept what is. Like I wasn't doing this big flashy work. I was really just doing the behind the scenes work. And that can be okay. It was even interesting to realize I'm not even really mad or resentful at them for some different reasons. And I'm almost sad and sorry with myself that I feel like I need to tell a slightly elevated story. So in some weird world, I then think you'll think better of me. But in the process, I feel less about myself. One of the questions I talk about in my coaching work with my client, because I coach women. I've coached some wonderful men along the way, but I really think of myself as a women's leadership coach, is this question of what do I think? What do I think? Because women especially, we want to people please. You know, the definition of perfectionism isn't dotting all of our I's and crossing all of the T's. It can show up that way, being really neat and organized it and on it and detail oriented. But the true definition of perfectionism is about trying to earn somebody else's approval, which is rooted in what will you think of me?
Right.
You know, what are you thinking because I'm wearing this skirt? You know, what are you, God, what are you thinking? Because I just shared my opinion about that. But was I right? I don't know. Why did I say that? I think I sound silly. All of that craziness in our head because we want to be liked and approved of by somebody else. And so the antidote to that has to be, what do I think about what I just said? What do I think about how I feel in this skirt? What do I think about my opinion in this meeting based on my experience and my smarts and the person that I am? What I think can be funny is some women will push back and go, well, shoot, Sarah, if I knew what I thought, you know, I wouldn't be spinning myself round in circles. Yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's a fair point. And what I say to that is, when we'll practice slowing down, right? Doing these things that you and I were talking about in terms of taking care of our spiritual condition, when we'll move our body, when we'll pray, when we'll meditate, when we'll do some breath work, we always get close to an answer. And I actually believe an answer will always be revealed if we're doing that work consistently. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know, which is an answer.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's an invitation to sit with it and just continue to get quiet until a next action reveals itself. And so I think there's something so potent about this. What do I think? And it's the very work I'm doing, like I said, because my tendency when I get off the beam is to want to impress and sound impressive, because ultimately I feel like I'm not, which is just BS. Just BS, you know, but it feels so real in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
And that feels so defining. And it's just not, it's our acceptance of ourselves. And like you've said in our conversation, like this is a lifelong work. This is just a continuous journey of the work, but you phrase it so beautifully. It sounds like you are definitely in the right place.
I am. Yeah. I mean, I do to the title of the book, I do feel full of myself in the ups and the downs and the trying to be too impressive and falling short and winning and achieving some lovely things. You know, I do feel full and filled by the journey I'm on, and that looks different every day. But there is this underlying pride in who I am. There's a hope about the future and who I can be and who the heck knows what it's going to bring me. I really, one of the things as a coach I really help women do is name their emotions and get good at that. You know, when we're under stress, when we're squeezed, it's mad, sad, and glad. You know, we can really typically only name those three, and we have this whole emotional range. You several times have said, I'm this and I'm this. Yes. Like I can be sad and I can also be joyful. I can feel powerless and I can feel optimistic. You know, there's this beautiful range that we're supposed to embody. And so at the very top of an emotional scale, there's joy, empowerment, freedom, love. And so I think it's easy to think, I'm aiming for that top spot. That's where I want to be. And I say, I think the sweet spot is number 7, which is peace and contentment.
Mm.
You know, like I'm aiming for number 7 as often as possible. And I define contentment as nothing needs to change for me to be okay right now. I might not like what's happening, but nothing needs to change. And that for me is a really attainable, hopeful place to be. And yes, I can still experience the joy and the freedom of the love. I don't want to cut that off. And I can experience the fear and grief and powerlessness at the other end of the spectrum. But I can kind of come to this resting place. And that helps me feel full of myself.
That is beautiful. So beautifully put. Oh, Sarah, it has been a pleasure talking to you and having you on here. And do you want to let people know how they can find you? Where can they find Full of Herself?
Yeah, it's for sale on our website. So our business is More Soul Sessions, more like my last name. And there's a page on there to buy the book. The book is also available on Amazon as well. So you can just Google Full of Herself and order a copy from there. And then one of the things that we share in our business that people love is a blog that I write every single week. I share, I've been writing it forever. That's what led to the book. And it's stories about how I feel full of myself, how I fall way short, and also any updates in our business that we have going on, events and special promotions and that kind of stuff. And it's just something that a lot of women get a lot out of. So you can sign up for that on the website as well.
Nice. I will definitely include links to those in the show notes.
Lovely.
And I appreciate you. I hope we connect again. I hope this isn't the last time we talk.
I feel exactly the same way, Brandy. Thanks for so much for what you're doing. It's making a difference. You are making a difference. So
As
thanks
are
for having me.
you. I hope to be doing the work that you're doing someday soon.
I hope that for you too.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.